For the graduating medical students this year, the 2021 match is nothing like we've ever seen before.
It certainly has posed many challenges that previous years, haven't had to deal with.
This is challenging.
The pandemic just made things worse.
Missed opportunities, any chances for an away rotation.
My away rotations got canceled.
An experience in an American institution is really what propels an application forward.
Interviews and interactions are all now virtual.
It's such a unique environment,
which will likely lead to a saturated market with applications, since there's no longer that financial limitation inherent to traveling.
I've been hearing from other attendings that, it's so easy, just go ahead and instead of applying to 30 programs, apply to 50.
Are other people freaking out like we are?
A little bit of anxiety is a good thing, but nobody needs to panic. Get excited, get pumped up. You're all going to be doctors. This is a very exciting time, even if we're all freaking out about it. Doesn't mean that we can't learn from this experience.
We're all going to be in the same boat.
Take advantage of all of the social media outlets that are now available.
Talk to us, kind of interact, and let's work together because we're all in this together.
There's a lot that's probably going to stay with us for the years to come, and it's worthwhile getting on board now.
Welcome back to Brainwaves, a podcast about neurology and medicine and all the fascinating science and history that come with it. I'm your host, Jim Siegler, and today we've prepared a special episode on the uniqueness of the 2021 Neurology Match, featuring several incredibly bright applicants in the upcoming cycle.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Not only has the COVID pandemic turned all of our lives upside down, many of us have gotten sick or known someone who's been sick. You may have lost a job or known someone out of work. It's restricted us from truly important life experiences, weddings, birthdays, funerals. Psychologically, who hasn't bought groceries and thought, do I need to wipe these with bleach first? Are they even safe to put in my fridge? You all know what I'm talking about. The pandemic has not only thrown a real wrench in each of these aspects of our lives, but in a different way, it has really transformed how physicians are being trained and recruited. This year's National Resident Match program will be unlike any year before it. And on the program today, we'll talk about why that is and what you, if you're an applicant, can do about it. Stay with us. We're happy to introduce our new show sponsor, the Neurology Minute. The Neurology Minute delivers 1 to 2 minute daily briefings of what you need to know in the field of neurology, the latest science focused on the brain, and timely topics explored by leading neurologists and neuroscientists. The Neurology Minute is from the American Academy of Neurology, with contributions by experts from the neurology journals Neurology Today, Continuum, and more. Subscribe to the Neurology Minute wherever you get your podcasts, or visit aan.com/podcast for more information about the show. This is just going to be a conversation. I was joined by the creators of the Twitter handle @InMatch2021 via Zoom to talk about this year's application cycle. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
This is exciting. Look at all. On the line, I got to speak with Adriana Ramirez.
Hi guys, my name is Adriana Ramirez. I'm from Puerto Rico and I study in Universidad Central del Caribe in Bayamón.
Dylan Del Papa.
I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm applying to the 2021 match cycle in neurology. I go to school at Ross University School of Medicine, which is a school based in, now it's Barbados.
Alvin Singh.
Hey everyone, my name is Alvin Singh. I'm a fourth year at Chicago Medical School.
And last but not least, we have Justine Kerr.
I'm a fourth year medical student at Tulane School of Medicine in New Orleans.
Go Green Wave. All right. I too was a Tulane School of Medicine grad.
Nice meeting you all.
I want to start by just thanking you guys for all that you've been doing. What initially amazed me after talking to Adriana, Dylan, Justine, and Alvin is how none of them knew each other before the spring of 2020. They told me that they all met on social media.
We've actually never met in person.
It's so bizarre because I'm from Puerto Rico. She's from Louisiana. Alvin is from Chicago. Dylan is from Canada.
It all started with Twitter, actually.
And together, they came up with an idea to leverage the COVID-19 pandemic in order to distribute high-yield information about the match process.
Our first instinct was to jump into the virtual community and try and figure out, are other people freaking out like we are? Or how are other applicants feeling? What are programs doing? And I think
The four of them have tracked and publicized emerging virtual open houses for each residency program. They've given out tips for the application cycle. They've taken polls from applicants and from programs. They went above and beyond to learn about how this year's cycle poses such a unique challenge to neurology and to other medical applicants. And they made their unbiased collective experience public.
And it's been a really exciting experience.
All of which, by the way, has been 100% selfless. There's really nothing they personally have gained out of the process. If anything, I can only imagine how much time that they must spend managing these social media accounts. Also on the call was Dr. Olga Tone, who you might recognize from prior Brainwave shows on managing multiple sclerosis.
I'm a neuroimmunology attending at Cooper, and I'm the associate program director at their program.
She serves as our expert witness here, having been an assistant program director for 2 academic hospitals. She's a board-certified neurologist, and she brings the perspective of a foreign medical grad. Why create a Twitter account for the upcoming neurology match? And are there other competing accounts that exist out there besides @InMatch 2021?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit about that. And I think
This is Justine Kerr.
But from an applicant's perspective, before the interview season went virtual, I had already had a Twitter account and was exploring the idea of using it in a way to professionally connect and network with people in the neurology community. Seemed like a really exciting and neat opportunity to get to know people outside of my own medical school and outside of the Tulane community. The American Academy of Neurology has a lot of resources that they offer through Instagram and Twitter. I started following that.
So, I mean, even before the pandemic,
Here's Adriana Ramirez, whose idea it was to create the Twitter account.
trying to find a platform where I could be able to share information and just ask questions about the application process. And I feel like the pandemic just made it even more difficult.
More difficult for a lot of reasons. Some programs don't have a neurology residency,
As myself, I actually don't have one either. So I feel
and almost
like
no
that was
applicant is
really
able to do away rotations.
The applicants who really count on the away rotations
Dylan Del Papa here.
for their experience and for mentorship.
And no one's doing a research year. Nobody's traveling. You can bet nobody's going to go for a second look at a program later in the application process. But having a central source of information, a publicly available social media account, it opens up the floor for applicants and residents and program directors to really engage. Justine again.
Because we've been able to get to know residents from other programs.
And I saw there was like so many students from different parts of the world that were in the same boat as myself.
We've been seeing program directors from residency programs on the virtual network.
And yeah, I'm proud to say that instead of feeling frustrated with the pandemic and feeling discouraged with the nature of its challenges for students, me and my team at NMatch have decided to flip that narrative and take this time to come together and help each other with valuable information and resources that will allow us to move forward. As of October 17th, we have 1,590 followers.
Which is more followers than the number of followers for the Brainwaves Twitter account.
And it's composed of already 111 residency programs.
To give you a sense as to what those numbers mean, let's consider how many programs are out there, how many applicants are out there, and how many people would be potentially interested in following InMatch 2021 on Twitter. The National Resident Match Program, or NRMP, publishes match data annually, and you can find all these numbers on their website at nrmp.org. Last year, there were 126 programs in the U.S. which offered residency programs in adult neurology, with 682 positions offered, and 665 positions ultimately filled, a 97.5% fill rate. The number of available positions in neurology, and practically every other medical discipline, has grown over the years, and neurology has seen a consistent 10% increase in the available spots each year since 2016. Dylan, I'd like to ask you this next question. Being from Barbados, why do you think this year's match is going to be more challenging to applicants compared to prior years? Why is it particularly challenging to IMG's international medical graduates?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. And It certainly has posed many challenges that previous years, haven't had to deal with, and we're kind of trying to work on our feet to address these challenges and come up with solutions to these challenges. But in terms of IMGs in particular, back in March, the CS exam was canceled, as you probably know. And so for IMGs, we require this exam to become certified by the ECFMG,
the Educational Committee for Foreign Medical Graduates,
and ultimately to participate in residency programs. So fortunately, the ECFMG came up with some alternative pathways for us to become certified without actually completing the CS exam. But these alternative pathways have also posed a number of challenges. So first of all, unfortunately, there are some IMGs who don't meet the criteria to be part of the alternative pathway. And so if they haven't had the opportunity to take the CS exam before it was canceled, they won't be able to participate in the 2021 match year. But then for those who are fortunate to meet that criteria and participate in the alternative pathways, they complete a English proficiency exam. So this exam has been challenging to IMGs. Myself and all of my colleagues have had a number of different challenges with this English proficiency exam. Namely, we need to participate in this exam in person. So some of us have had to cross state lines to do this.
You can imagine the ramifications of this. Even as a physician myself, a doc who sees COVID-19 patients every day, my daughter's school won't let her return without a 14-day quarantine if she travels into a state with a COVID travel ban.
This has been challenging, and as I mentioned earlier, we're working to face these challenges and come up with unique solutions to them.
In 2020, adult neurology was the fourth most popular medical specialty among IMGs. Internal medicine was the most popular, with 2,116 applicants. Family medicine was second, 405 applicants. Pediatrics, 340. And neurology, 235. But, like Adriana and Dylan mentioned earlier, the COVID pandemic has strangled opportunities for IMGs and for outside rotators at U.S. institutions to visit academic programs and interact with their residents and faculty. Also, because of testing limitations, one might expect there to be a much greater weight placed on the USMLE Step 1 than in previous years. Many applicants this year have not had the opportunity to take the USMLE Step 2 CK or their CS before their interviews because of these testing site restrictions. For those who may have performed more poorly on Step 1, maybe they were sick. A friend of mine actually totaled her car on the way to the test site, still took the test by the way. Of all these applicants who may not have done so well on Step 1, they could still score highly on Step 2, but their application won't feature this. Also, being an IMG may only be limiting for some of the top-tier, highly competitive academic programs. All IMG applicants should confirm which programs accept your particular visa, and it is not unreasonable to ask program leadership how competitive their programs are for IMG applicants, what the average board scores are for IMGs. Historically, just to reassure the international applicants in the audience, more than a third of positions in neurology last year were filled by IMGs, most of whom were non-US foreign graduates. And there may yet be another silver lining to the COVID pandemic here. Dylan Del Papa again.
In some ways, the pandemic has kind of served as a catalyst to promote inclusivity to these students who don't have access to away rotations by virtual means.
Virtual means, as in social media, Twitter, the InMatch 2021 account, all enable applicants and residents and program directors and so on to engage in discussions even before applications are submitted, well before interviews begin.
Twitter has been by far and away an amazing platform to not only connect with mentors, but also for educational purposes. So many of the tutorials that have been put on by these dedicated attendings is pretty amazing. So I look forward to the future of where this goes, because I expect that social media will play a big role in promoting inclusivity, not just for this match, but for the ones in the future as well.
I want to ask actually a question to Olga Tone, who I think has a very unique perspective, being both from Brazil and also now serving in the role of a leadership position as an assistant program director at Cooper. Olga, what have you seen? What's been your experience in the past? How is this different?
Right. So I'm going to echo Dylan's words that this is challenging mostly for the people that either don't have a neurology residency in their own American program, or for any IMGs. And as nice and as optimistic as I would like to feel about the chances for everyone, it's hard when you can't compare apples to apples, right? It's seeing those letters of recommendation from an experience in an American institution is really what propels an application forward. Back when I was applying in 2010, as Jim mentioned, I'm an IMG myself. I went to a medical school in Brazil, my home country, and what every single student knows, what propels your application forward is your letter of recommendations and your prior experiences with, a combination of research and other activities. So I did clerkships and I did 2 sub-Is during my last year of medical school, and those strong experiences were really what counted the most. There's also people that I'm sure missed opportunities that were previously arranged for research years in a different institution that were going to be in person. And this is very challenging.
I want to shift gears now and speak kind of generally about the candidacy of medical student applicants. What are the chances of matching or not matching? What about you or your application may influence your odds of matching? And then more importantly, how might this virtual application cycle affect your chances to match? Alvin, I have a question for you. So you will have a Master's of Science, or you already have a Master's of Science. You're in a Chicago program. You are particularly poised to have a good, successful match this year. So, congratulations, by the way. But also, compared to applicants who don't have a master's degree, who have a DO degree versus an MD degree, what kind of challenges are they going to face? Is there really a difference that you all know of as far as matching prospects?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially in the case we kind of talked about. Some schools don't have specific specialty rotations or, have to do away rotations to get that experience. So I think especially for the DO versus MD debate that's been going on in Med Twitter, I think that's, the bias that's been historically evident is really being broken down. And I think Med Twitter has been a huge vehicle of that because of the lack of hierarchical barriers between students, residents, and attendings. We all talk to each other like we're all friends and at the same level. So it's such a unique environment to connect with each other and all the things that we've been talking about.
I agree with Alvin here. Probably not a huge deal if you're an MD or a DO. Certainly having an MS or an MPH or a PhD, these are pluses. But it's not necessarily because of the title you have. It's because these degrees afford the applicant more experiences, more research, more publications, more opportunities to explore disparities in care, to volunteer in the community, to practice global health. But as far as the MD versus DO argument, of the neurology matches from 2020, only 47% were MD graduates. Compare this to 2016, in which 53% were MD graduates. Over time, we've seen a slow increase in the proportion of DO neurology matches, and this is similar to the trend in internal medicine matches, in which only 40% of positions were filled by MDs, a decline from 47% in 2016. But other specialties, particularly those that are considered to be more competitive, they're very unlikely to match a DO candidate. Neurosurgery, for example, had 88% of positions filled by MDs. Child neurology, 70% MDs. Plastic surgery, 92%. Vascular surgery, 81%. You can also think about it from a different angle. If you're a DO, based on the number of DO matches in neurology from 2020, how many positions are available to you? And what's the probability that you will match in your first choice? Combining all the opportunities for a match in neurology, whether it's medicine neurology, psych neuro, or just adult neurology, there are 7 positions available for every DO applicant. Compare this to only 2 to 3 positions for every MD candidate. And according to the NRMP data, if you're an IMG, then more than half matched into their top program. US grads were even more likely to match into their top choice. But let's say that you're a glass is half empty kind of person. What are the odds if you're only applying to neurology that you won't match? Of all the total neuro applicants from last year, only 3 to 4% did not match in neurology. This was mostly an effect driven by IMGs, 31% of whom did not match if they selected neurology as their only specialty. And it's slightly driven by the DO applicants, 7% of whom didn't match versus only 2% of MD applicants. Altogether, neurology ranks in the top 3 programs in which applicants are most likely to match, along with medicine and pediatrics. The surgical disciplines, dermatology, psychiatry, emergency medicine, applicants to these programs have a 10% or more chance of failing to match. So while it's harder to match in neurology as an IMG or a DO grad, the truth is, and I hope you'll believe me, neurology is really not that competitive of a specialty. And it's a very welcoming match, regardless of your country of origin, your degree, and your board scores. Dr. Tone also had some thoughts about what your degree might mean for your application.
I think ideally what programs would have is a combination of both US MDs and IMG MDs and DOs. I think for you guys, right, when you look, and I'm sure most of you are already doing this, when you look at the alumni section of every single one of those programs, ideally you want a combo. And I'll say, even as an IMG, I was anti-programs that were IMG only, because that means that they can get the American ones, right? I wanted ideally a combo, and you will see that some of those...
I don't think this point can be stressed enough. Getting a combination of training experiences, a diversified applicant pool, it's not just important for numbers and rankings, or checking off a box that your program is open to foreign grads or to DOs. It actually benefits each trainee, and it benefits the care that residents deliver. As an attending who has an MD, I love it when my DO resident recommends an osteopathic approach to a patient's headache or their gait impairment. It really is rewarding, and it's personally educational for me to provide my patients with medical care that targets the body rather than just the symptoms.
And I can speak for my own. It was a combo of both internationals as well as MDs, and you can clearly see places that would be perfectly capable of getting American MD onlys. But when they really go out of their way to select a group of people there, and some of those are going to bring the mix of cultures from different places and different backgrounds or expertises with the MD and DO different emphasis. I think that's really the ideal.
Yeah, the residency recruitment already is stressful enough.
This is Adriana Ramirez again, who's not only an IMG, but she's also graduating from a program without a neurology residency.
The pandemic just made things worse.
Worse, for reasons we've discussed. But having created the InMatch 2021 Twitter account, she and her colleagues have learned a lot from the process.
Many medical students have yet to take board exams. Others don't have specialty-specific letters of recommendation, access to away rotation.
That also was canceled as a result of the pandemic.
We lack of mentorship and guidance, especially, I would say, IMGs. This has been a struggle, and I've noticed students have been reaching out to us. We even had gotten really emotional messages, and we've taken this platform for medical students and programs to connect and learn from each other, but also to advocate for students. For example, we created a mentorship program.
For more information on the mentorship opportunities, Dylan Del Papa and his colleagues produced a video on how to find a mentor and how to work with them, and they posted it on their Twitter account on October 14th. You can find it if you search the hashtag #HowToNeuroTwitter. In addition, their Twitter account has centralized a list of resident open houses. They've solicited specific and anonymized questions about the application process, and you can submit your questions at any time using a link that's been pinned to their profile. Questions that have been asked so far have been things like, I was told it can be a red flag if a candidate's single. Is this true? And the overwhelming answer from program directors is, this is not true. Another question, due to COVID-19, my exam was delayed. I was finally able to take it, but I'll receive this score on November 4th. 1, should I contact the program coordinators as soon as I apply? And 2, will I still have a chance to interview? The majority of respondents to this question indicated that the applicant should still reach out to the PD as soon as you apply, and yes, you should still be able to interview. Furthermore, the InMatch 2021 crew has been extremely active about retweeting adult and child neurology residency program tweets to keep their followers updated about all the programs, not just the programs that you may be personally following on your own Twitter account. By following InMatch 2021, you can see a feed that showcases all the social media activity of U.S. neurology residency programs, and even some of the funnier posts, like home videos of program directors who are vying to be the coolest and hippest docs in neurology.
We're learning as we go, for sure.
Again, Dylan Del Papa here, who also manages the InMatch 2021 account.
One thing I've learned is in order to get the most out of social media and networking, it's important to actually try to be active in terms of not just commenting on other people's posts, but actually try to add value if you can to the posts that are already out there so you can have a meaningful educational conversation with other people on social media.
Yeah, if I can just add,
Alvin Singh here.
I think just kind of bringing your authentic self to Twitter is really important too. It's like I did a master's in global health. I'm really interested in health disparities and really advocating for that and making that apparent. It just goes a long way. You get to meet people that share similar interests and we can really make a bigger impact. It's again about advocating.
So one of the things that I do want to emphasize is that we're all going to be in the same boat when it comes to this interview cycle being virtual.
Justine Kerr again.
Many of us will never have had a virtual interview in our lives until this moment. And those are things that are, for the most part, out of our control. So one of the things that I really want to encourage myself to do and for everyone else to do as well going into this cycle is to put our best foot forward and focus on the reasons why we wanted to go into this specialty and why we want to go into neurology. Because at the end of the day, no matter what type of interview it's going to be about what we're passionate about and why we want to go into neurology.
Do you know what this is? This little group, this is your interview trail buddies.
Dr. Tone again.
Jim and I'm sure he can share some experiences, but when you interview in person, you meet the same people over and over and you end up getting in touch. And for me, it was a group of like 4 other people and we were constantly in the same places, and it starts with a comment of like, wow, we're dressed exactly the same. Then it evolves to like, let's go for a happy hour after this interview dinner, and then you start keeping in touch, and sometimes you actually plan on, hey, I got offered those and those dates, when are you going there? And then you start planning on going at the same time. And this that you guys are sharing is really, I had not realized this. Social media is giving you the opportunity of having an interview buddy system.
I think the mention of interview trail buddies is a really, really great point.
Justine Kerr here.
Because that was something that applicants from previous years have said is one of the best parts about the interview season is you meet so many wonderful and amazing applicants who ultimately become your friends or your co-residents. And that made me particularly sad this year because I thought I wasn't going to have that opportunity.
But thankfully, due to the rapidly growing social media presence of residency programs and of applicants and the connections that are made by the NMatch 2021 Twitter account, Justine and her co-applicants have embraced this paradigm shift and they've used it to their advantage.
So being able to meet so many incredible applicants already before the interview cycle begins solely through Twitter and through virtual networking has been a really, really cool and unique thing to experience this year.
In the final part of our show, what I think the residency applicants in the audience have all been waiting for, I wanted to talk about what makes a strong applicant. What are programs looking for? We've talked about the added value of foreign grads, of DOs versus MDs. We've stressed the importance of making yourself and your interests known to programs using social media and other virtual means. But what of this stands out?
I love that question. Unfortunately, there's still many places that primarily filter the applicants by scores. And I completely understand. And when you have 400 applicants a year, and now Cooper last year had 700 applicants, it is kind of impossible. But in an ideal scenario, really looking through all the applications and ideally selecting for interviews the group of people that you think are going to match the vibe of the program. So either because of their clinical experiences or because of their interests or because of their extracurricular activities, right? I think ideally having a combination of not just great clinical experiences, maybe research if you're interested, or hobbies that maybe match the vibe of the program, and ideally that match each other, right? It's, I think interviewing and selecting a good group of residents is an art, and making sure that that group are people that not just are going to be excellent in terms of patient care, but are also going to learn from each other and do well together.
Take-home points, tips for applicants this cycle. Be yourself.
Be honest yourself.
Kind of bringing your authentic self is really important.
Get online if you're not already.
Twitter has been by far and away an amazing platform to not only connect with mentors, but also for educational purposes.
The American Academy of Neurology has a lot of resources.
Don't just get online, engage the virtual community.
Try to add value if you can to the posts that are already out there so you can have a meaningful educational conversation.
Don't stretch yourself thin by applying to 50 programs if you're a US grad.
Apply it and go to 15 to 20 programs. You don't need to go to more than that.
If you're an IMG, just as you would for any previous year, you'll still want to cast a wider net.
If you actually interview at 30 plus programs, you're going to go mad at the end of this.
And finally, adapt.
This is, I guess, the good side of the pandemic. It brings a diverse group of people that otherwise would not have been pushed into meeting each other virtually.
We're learning as we go, for sure.
That's it for another week of the Brainwaves podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. As a reminder, Brainwaves is intended for medical education only and should not be used for routine clinical decision making. For the applicants of the audience, I will definitely caution you to take every piece of advice here verbatim. You really should reach out to a mentor, have them go through your application, your strengths, your weaknesses, and really formulate a plan for your application process. This week's episode of the Brainwaves podcast was produced by myself, Jim Siegler, out of Studio 3 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Music for our program was courtesy of Akash Gandhi, Little Glass Min, Kevin McLeod, Josh Woodward, Julie Maxwell, and Kai Engel. Our theme song was composed by Timothy Dalton. Sound effects by Mike Koenig and Daniel Simeone. For more information on what was discussed on the show, I'd recommend you check out the nrmp.org website and talk to your clerkship and program directors about what they are looking for in applicants. Follow us on Twitter on Brainwaves Audio if you haven't already, and I'd really encourage all the applicants to follow at NMatch2021 on Twitter as well. I'm Jim Siegler. Talk to you soon.
I am mildly fearful of our ability to figure out if you're much cooler online than in person.
This is definitely a country song. I'm so much cooler online. Have you heard that song? I'm gonna play it. I'm totally gonna find it and I'm gonna play it.